The lesson: choose your cost, choose your aim, and carry suffering on purpose. Life charges a price no matter what you do. There is a basic truth most people avoid because it feels unfair. Existence has a cost. Not sometimes, not for unlucky people, for everyone. If you're alive, you are already paying. You pay with time, with energy, with attention, with limitation. You pay with disappointments you didn't schedule, with losses you didn't vote for, with the simple fact that your body is fragile and your calendar is not infinite. The trap is thinking you can negotiate out of payment entirely. People try. I'll stay flexible forever. I'll keep every option open. I won't commit until I'm sure. I'll wait until I feel ready. I'll avoid responsibility so I can avoid pain. But avoiding the price doesn't remove the price. It only changes how you pay it. If you don't choose a cost, life chooses one for you, and life is not known for gentle billing. When the payment arrives late, it often arrives with interest. So the real question is not whether you will sacrifice. The question is, will you sacrifice deliberately for something you respect, or will you sacrifice accidentally for nothing? The eternal child, problem: infinite potential, zero reality. Most people carry a hidden fantasy. I want to be unlimited. In childhood, that fantasy almost makes sense. When you're young, you can imagine being anything: doctor, artist, engineer, athlete, entrepreneur. You can hold multiple futures at once. You are not yet defined. And because you are not yet defined, you feel powerful, not because you have power, but because you have possibility. That's a beautiful stage of life. But it has a shadow. Potential can become a hiding place. Because as long as you remain pure potential, you don't have to risk being evaluated. You can stay inside the dream of greatness without confronting the reality of effort, failure, and limitation. Potential is safe. It feels like freedom. But there's a catch. Potential without commitment becomes vagueness. Vagueness without discipline becomes drift. Drift without purpose becomes anxiety. Anxiety without purpose becomes resentment. And resentment is often the emotional smell of a life you are not building. An eternal child may look free, but often it's a disguised prison. The person is open to everything, but anchored to nothing. They avoid choosing because choosing means losing alternatives. They avoid a path because a path has edges, rules, and sacrifices. Yet here is the paradox: without a frame, you cannot aim. Without an aim, you cannot move. Without movement, you cannot meaningfully live. So the refusal to grow up isn't neutral. It's not just delaying adulthood. It is often delaying the formation of a self. Why maturity feels like death, and why it isn't. Growing up involves a kind of symbolic death, not physical death, something more psychological: the death of all possible selves. When you commit to one direction, you let other directions go. That feels painful because it is painful. If you choose medicine, you are not choosing 10 other lives you could have lived. If you choose business, you are not choosing the life of pure art. If you choose marriage, you are not choosing infinite romantic options. If you choose a city, you are not choosing every other city. To become real, you must become specific. Specificity feels like limitation, and limitation feels like loss, and loss triggers grief. This is why many people stall. But here is what they don't understand. The alternative to limitation is not freedom. The alternative is disorder. A person who refuses to define themselves often ends up being defined by their impulses, their addictions, their social circle, their fear, their avoidance, their bitterness, their algorithms, their comparisons. So the real choice is not limit or no limit. It is choose your limitation consciously or be limited unconsciously by chaos, time, and habit. That is the second lesson. Time is not your friend, but it can be your teacher. There is something terrifying about time. It keeps moving whether you cooperate or not. When you're 19 and confused, people tend to be forgiving. Confusion looks normal on you. When you're 30 and equally confused, the world treats it differently. Not always cruelly, but differently. Because adulthood implies development, and development implies responsibility. What happens if you do not develop? You don't remain young. You become stuck. And stuckness does something brutal. It turns your future into a shrinking room. The longer you postpone building competence, the harder it becomes to build it. Not because it is impossible, but because you carry the weight of regret, and regret drains courage. Also because life adds responsibilities anyway: bills, parents, aging, health issues, social comparison, pressure. That's why avoidance feels easy early and feels catastrophic later. This is why the mature person asks early, what price am I willing to pay now to avoid a worse price later? That is adult thinking, trading a smaller voluntary cost for a larger involuntary cost you can see coming. The substitute life, when you replace reality with fantasy. When people avoid the sacrifices of reality, they often build substitute pleasures. Substitute pleasures come in many forms: endless scrolling, pornography and sexual fantasy without relationship, games without real-world competence, arguments without productive action, shopping without purpose, plans without execution, ideology without personal responsibility, gossip without contribution. Substitutes feel good because they provide the emotion without the cost. But substitutes always have a hidden tax. They reduce your tolerance for the effort real life requires. They train you to seek reward without work. They create a life where you feel busy, but don't become stronger. And then you wake up one day with a harsh feeling. I have consumed a lot, but I have built very little. That moment is painful, but it's also useful, because pain sometimes tells the truth faster than comfort. You need a goal to experience positive emotion. Here is a psychological reality many people don't want to accept. Human beings do not reliably experience sustained positive emotion without an aim. Pleasure exists, yes, but pleasure is not enough. Pleasure is a spark. Meaning is a fire. If you've ever achieved something you wanted, graduation, money, a milestone, you may have noticed something strange. The victory is short. You feel proud for a day, maybe a week. Then the mind asks, what now? This doesn't mean achievements are worthless. It means the human nervous system is designed for pursuit, not permanent arrival. So you must structure your life around a direction, progress, discipline, and renewal of meaningful goals. This is why the aim matters more than the trophy. And this is also why people who get everything they wanted can still fall apart. Without a meaningful game to play, the psyche starts inventing problems, sometimes destructive ones, because a stagnant life becomes unbearable. We are built for engagement. The balanced life, security, flow, risk, order, flood, venture. A healthy life is not pure safety, and it is not pure chaos. If your life is only safety, you become bored, soft, and resentful. Too much predictability turns into emotional deadness. If your life is only chaos, you become anxious, scattered, and exhausted. Too much uncertainty turns into panic. The ideal zone is the middle. Enough structure to stabilize you, enough challenge to develop you. This middle zone is where you feel alert, awake, and capable. It's also where learning happens fastest. This is why a person often feels most alive when they are doing something slightly beyond their current competence. They are forced to pay attention. They must improve in real time. Meaning often shows up there, not as a mystical glow, but as a signal you are doing something that matters and demands your full self. The noble aim, why small goals often collapse under pressure. You can aim at many things: comfort, status, pleasure, revenge, dominance, money, applause, escape. Some of these aims work short term, but under real suffering, illness, loss, betrayal, failure, responsibility, aging, many shallow aims collapse. They simply do not have enough weight to hold you together when life becomes heavy. That's why you need what we can call a noble aim. Not perfect, not saintly, not performative, just something that is bigger than your mood, meaningful enough to justify effort, beneficial enough to reduce your self-contempt, real enough to orient your choices. A noble aim can be becoming competent in a skill that serves others, building a stable family system, telling the truth more consistently, creating something valuable, repairing what you have damaged, taking responsibility where you used to blame, helping your community, reducing suffering where you can. What makes an aim noble is not that it sounds poetic. It's that it calls you upward rather than dragging you downward. Why truth matters: lies don't just fool others, they break you. Many people treat lying as a social tactic. I'll bend reality a little to get what I want. But lies have deeper consequences. A lie is not just a false statement. A lie is a form of internal corruption because it splits you into two parts: the part that knows what is real, and the part that performs what is convenient. That internal split creates anxiety because the mind must constantly manage contradictions. Over time, frequent lying has a predictable effect. You lose clarity about what you actually believe. You lose respect for yourself. You become less stable under stress. You become more resentful and defensive. You start needing bigger lies to patch the smaller ones. Truth, in contrast, does something psychologically stabilizing. It makes the world more predictable. It allows you to plan. It reduces internal conflict. It turns your speech into a tool for building reality rather than escaping it. This is why truth is not merely moral. It is practical. It is structural. Suffering has multiple sources, and confusing them makes you bitter. A useful way to think about suffering is to separate its sources. Suffering from being fragile and finite. You have a limited lifespan. Your body can break. People you love will die. Pain is unavoidable. Suffering from social judgment and social systems. Any society has standards. Standards create evaluation. Evaluation creates winners and losers. Even in kind cultures you will be judged. In harsh cultures you will be judged more cruelly. Suffering from your own choices and avoidances. There are mistakes you repeat, responsibilities you delay, habits you know are weakening you. You feel the cost, and you also know you play a role. If you mix all these together into one emotional soup, you become confused and angry at everything. But if you separate them, you can respond intelligently. Some suffering must be accepted with courage. Some suffering can be negotiated by improving your environment. Some suffering can be reduced by improving your behavior. This separation is powerful because it returns agency to you without denying reality. Voluntary confrontation. The cure for avoidance. One of the most reliable principles in psychology is this: avoidance makes fear grow. Confrontation makes fear shrink. When you avoid something that scares you, you receive short-term relief. Your nervous system learns avoidance works. So the fear increases because now your brain treats the situation as a genuine threat. When you voluntarily confront the thing you fear, your nervous system learns, I can handle more than I thought. That produces confidence, not as a slogan, but as embodied knowledge. This is why courageous people are not fearless. They are trained. They repeatedly choose the voluntary burden over the involuntary collapse. And here's the part that changes lives. If you stop avoiding what you know you must face, and you do that consistently for years, you have no idea how strong you can become. Most people never test their real ceiling because they spend too much time negotiating with their discomfort. Meaning is not a feeling you wait for. It's a life you build. A common modern fantasy is, I'll act when I feel motivated. But motivation is unreliable. Meaning is often the result of responsibility, not the prerequisite. You don't find meaning like you find a lost item. You create meaning like you build a house, with daily structure, with honesty, with skill, with service, with sacrifice. Meaning tends to appear when your life aligns with your values. You are improving. You are useful. You are truthful. You are carrying a load you chose. In other words, meaning shows up as a reward for living in a way you can respect. The network effect. Your life affects more people than you think. People often underestimate their influence. I'm just one person. What I do doesn't matter. That is a comforting belief, because if nothing matters, you're free from responsibility. But it's not accurate. You are connected. Your behavior affects your family, friends, colleagues. Their behavior affects others. This spreads outward. Even small changes ripple. If you become more disciplined, truthful, and responsible, you don't just benefit yourself. You become less chaotic to be around. You reduce conflict. You become someone others can rely on. That changes your environment. And when environments improve, lives improve. This is why responsibility is not merely personal. It's social. The two roads: meaningful responsibility versus meaningless freedom. Here's the decision that sits under most human drama. Road A, nothing matters, so I'm free. The benefit, no responsibility. The cost, emptiness, drifting, hidden despair. Road BT, everything matters, so I must act. The benefit, meaning growth, earned self-respect. The cost, effort, fear, accountability. Many people claim they want Road B, but they behave like Road A because Road B is heavy. The question is not what you say you want. The question is what you choose when you don't feel like choosing. And the uncomfortable truth is, a meaningful life is often built on days when you do not want to build it. 15 practical framework how to pick your sacrifice without getting lost. Let's turn the philosophy into a method. Identify the unavoidable costs. Write down what life will charge you no matter what. Time passing, aging, effort required for competence, discomfort required for growth, responsibility required for relationships. This isn't pessimism. This is clarity. Identify your current sacrifices. You are already sacrificing, but for what? Examples: sacrificing sleep for entertainment, sacrificing fitness for comfort, sacrificing peace for drama, sacrificing future for short-term pleasure, sacrificing self-respect for approval. List the real sacrifices you're making right now. Choose a better trade. Ask, I must pay what is worth paying for. Choose one domain to upgrade: health, skill, relationships, finances, study, spiritual practice, honesty, order in your living space. Build a frame through discipline. Pick one small daily discipline that proves seriousness: 45 minutes of focused study, 30 minutes of exercise, 20 minutes of writing. Consistent sleep schedule, one hard conversation you've been avoiding, reducing a destructive habit. Discipline is the frame that turns potential into reality. Add voluntary challenge. Once stability exists, add controlled exposure to the unknown. Present your work publicly. Learn a harder module. Take a role with responsibility. Face a fear in increments. That's where growth accelerates. Life will demand a price from you whether you plan for it or not. You can pay by drifting, or you can pay by building. You can pay in regret, or you can pay in effort. You can pay in bitterness, or you can pay in discipline. The cost is unavoidable, but the direction is not. You do not become strong by wishing for ease. You become strong by choosing what is worth carrying. Pick a burden that makes you better. Pick an aim that justifies your suffering. Tell the truth so your mind can stand on solid ground. Face what you fear so your world stops shrinking, because the alternative is not peace. The alternative is a slow collapse into a life that feels smaller every year. Why responsibility feels heavy and why that weight is strength. One of the strangest psychological facts about human beings is this: we often complain about responsibility, yet we suffer more deeply without it. At first glance, responsibility feels like a burden. It restricts freedom. It demands effort. It ties your actions to consequences. It removes the comfortable excuse of, it's not my fault. So many people try to avoid it. They say, I just want to live freely. I don't want pressure. I don't want expectations. I don't want to be tied down. But what happens when responsibility disappears? Life doesn't become light, it becomes empty. Without responsibility, your days lose structure, your choices lose gravity, your suffering loses meaning, your successes feel accidental, your failures feel humiliating. Responsibility gives weight to your actions, and weight is what makes things real. A life without weight feels unreal, and human beings cannot tolerate unreality for long without becoming anxious, cynical, or self-destructive. The paradox is this: responsibility hurts, but meaning hurts less than meaninglessness. The difference between chosen burdens and imposed burdens. Not all burdens are equal. There are burdens you choose: training your body, studying a difficult subject, building a business, raising children, repairing a broken relationship, telling the truth when it costs you. And there are burdens that fall on you: illness, betrayal, loss, economic pressure, aging, death. The critical difference is not the weight, it's agency. Chosen burdens strengthen you, organize your life, give suffering a purpose. Imposed burdens weaken you if you resist them blindly, but can strengthen you if you face them voluntarily. This is why people who choose difficulty early often cope better with tragedy later. They have trained themselves to stand under weight, Avoiding all burden does not protect you. It leaves you unprepared. Why people secretly sabotage themselves. Self-sabotage often looks irrational from the outside. Why would someone procrastinate on something important, destroy a good opportunity, stay in chaos they hate, repeat the same mistake again and again? Because chaos is familiar. Even painful familiarity can feel safer than unfamiliar growth. Improvement demands responsibility, discipline, exposure to judgment, loss of excuses. Failure lets you stay small but safe. Success removes the illusion that someday I could be great if things were different. Self-sabotage preserves the fantasy of potential at the cost of reality. This is why growth often triggers anxiety. It removes hiding places. Why envy is a signal, not a sin. Envy is uncomfortable, but it is informative. When you envy someone, it usually points to something you value, something you believe is possible, something you are not pursuing. Envy becomes toxic when it turns into resentment. They don't deserve it. The system is rigged. They're lucky. People like me can't win. But envy used properly asks a better question: what are they doing that I am avoiding? Often the answer is long-term discipline, consistency, sacrifice, responsibility, delayed gratification. Envy is often pain produced by comparison, but it can also be a compass if you listen without lying to yourself. Why comfort is a dangerous goal. Comfort is not evil. But comfort as a primary aim weakens people. Comfort trains you to avoid effort. Avoidance trains fear. Fear shrinks your world. A life optimized for comfort slowly becomes fragile. Small disruptions feel catastrophic. Minor stress feels unbearable. Normal responsibility feels oppressive. Strength comes from tolerating discomfort voluntarily, not glorifying suffering, but using it to build capacity. This is why meaningful lives often look harder from the outside, but feel more stable on the inside. Discipline is not punishment, it is memory. Many people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline is harshness, rigidity, self-denial, control for its own sake, but discipline is better understood as memory across time. Discipline is how your present self honors promises made by your past self for the benefit of your future self. Without discipline, each day resets, lessons are forgotten, intentions dissolve, progress collapses. With discipline, effort compounds, skills accumulate, identity stabilizes, confidence becomes earned. Discipline is not about becoming less human, it's about becoming reliable to yourself. Identity is built through repeated action. You don't find yourself by thinking. You build yourself by acting. Identity emerges from patterns. What you do when no one is watching, what you do when it's inconvenient, what you do when it's uncomfortable, what you do repeatedly. You are not what you intend. You are what you practice. This is liberating because it means you are not trapped by your past, only by your habits. Why meaning grows under responsibility. Meaning does not appear when life is easy. Meaning appears when effort is required, stakes are real, consequences exist, improvement is possible. Responsibility turns suffering into contribution. Without responsibility, suffering feels pointless. With responsibility, suffering becomes tolerable because it leads somewhere. This is why people who care for others often endure hardship better than those who live only for themselves. Responsibility binds pain to purpose. The illusion of infinite time. Young people often feel time is abstract, but time is concrete. Each year that passes reduces possibility, increases consequence, amplifies habits. This is not tragic, it is clarifying. Finite time forces prioritization. The question becomes, what is worth my limited energy? Avoiding that question does not stop time, it only ensures regret. Courage is built, not discovered. Courage is not a personality trait you either have or don't have. Courage is a muscle. It grows when you tell the truth when it's risky, face fear gradually, choose long-term benefit over short-term relief. Courage shrinks when you avoid lie, rationalize, delay indefinitely. The good news, courage responds quickly to training. Why lies multiply suffering? A single lie may seem harmless, but lies accumulate complexity. Each lie requires maintenance, creates anxiety, fractures trust, distorts perception. Truth simplifies life. It may hurt temporarily, but it reduces future chaos. Truth aligns your inner map with reality, and navigation becomes possible again. Resentment is a signal of abandoned responsibility. Resentment often says, I am sacrificing but not voluntarily. I feel trapped. I feel cheated. Resentment grows when responsibility is avoided, effort is withheld, honesty is compromised. The cure is not revenge or complaint. The cure is voluntary responsibility, chosen, not imposed. The proper use of pain is not always bad. Pain signals boundaries, imbalance, avoidance. Ignoring pain leads to catastrophe. Listening to pain leads to adjustment. The goal is not to eliminate pain, but to use it wisely, becoming someone you can respect. At the deepest level, living in a way that allows you to respect yourself. Self-respect does not come from praise, status, comparison, comfort. It comes from honesty, effort, courage, responsibility, contribution. Self-respect is earned quietly through private discipline. Life demands payment. You cannot escape the cost, but you can choose the currency. You can pay with discipline instead of regret, effort instead of resentment, courage instead of fear, responsibility instead of emptiness. Choose a burden that strengthens you. Choose an aim that justifies effort. Tell the truth so reality becomes navigable. Face fear so your world expands. Build meaning so suffering becomes bearable. Life will not become easier because you wish it to. It becomes meaningful when you decide to carry something worth carrying. The cost is unavoidable, but the direction is yours.